The cold steel of a blade pierced Herkin's back, delivered by the very hands he had just fought to protect. He looked up into the mocking eyes of the Thunder Queen, realization dawning that his loyalty was worth nothing compared to gold. As his vision faded to black, the system announced his death and a forced lockout from the virtual world. He awoke with a gasp inside his VR capsule, the physical world feeling strange and heavy compared to the game. Rage burned in his chest as he replayed the betrayal in his mind, vowing to hunt down every person who had wronged him. Desperate to find his betrayers in reality, he sprinted into the rain-slick streets, his mind racing with a singular focus. The blinding headlights of a truck were the last thing he saw before the world twisted and shattered again. Instead of death, he found himself standing in the familiar, sun-drenched plains of the Warlord tutorial zone. A massive minotaur, a monster removed 5 years ago, roared at him, confirming the impossible truth of his regression. Other players begged for his help, but Herkin ignored them, drawing his rusted sword with a cold, veteran gaze. With a single fluid motion, he bypassed the monster's heavy swing and delivered a fatal blow to its neck. When the cowering players offered him a guild invite, he cut them down without hesitation, refusing to ever trust a teammate again. He realized he possessed 5 years of future knowledge, an advantage that would make him the most powerful being in the game. Exiting the tutorial, he found himself back in the real-world showroom where his journey had originally begun. He checked his bank account, only to find he was as penniless and desperate as he had been in his past life. He walked into a loan shark's office, knowing that a heavy debt was a small price to pay for a head start in the game. With his new VR gear finally in his possession, he prepared to re-enter Warlord and choose a path no one else dared to take. He appeared in the class selection hall, greeted by the graceful goddess Ariadne, who offered him the standard paths of the warrior. Rejecting the roles of warrior and cleric, he demanded the power of the dark arts, much to the system's surprise. An old mage appeared in a flash of smoke, warning him that the path of dark magic would slowly destroy his soul. Herkin did not flinch, placing his hand on the forbidden skill book to accept his fate as a necromancer. Dark energy surged through his veins, granting him his very first skill, the ability to summon skeleton fragments. He tossed a small bone fragment onto the cold stone floor, watching as it clicked and transformed into a full skeleton warrior. The skeleton was clumsy and weak, its head falling off the moment it tried to move, leaving Herkin to wonder if he made a mistake. He realized the summons had a deep learning system, meaning they would only become effective if he trained them personally. When a pack of wolves lunged from the shadows, Herkin stepped back and ordered his skeleton to engage. The wolves tore the skeleton apart instantly, but Herkin simply summoned it again, relentless in his pursuit of perfection. He spent hours teaching the undead how to dodge and strike, using his own veteran combat skills as a template. Finally, the skeleton moved with a grace that no other necromancer's summon could match, effortlessly cutting down a wolf in midair. With his first minion ready, Herkin headed toward Figus Castle, the main gathering hub for new adventurers. A group of arrogant thugs tried to block his path, demanding an apology for a simple bump on the shoulder. Before a fight could break out, a massive aura of power silenced the crowd, as the top-ranked warrior Shev stepped in. Herkin ignored the famous guildmaster's help, walking away without a word, as he did not want to be anyone's shadow again. He reached the Raiders Association and picked a quest that every other player had rejected due to its low reward. He knew that clearing this specific dungeon at a low level would grant him the prospect title, boosting all his stats permanently. To hide his identity while recording his gameplay for social media, he purchased a traditional Haho mask from a street vendor. Wearing the mask, he entered the Bima Mountain Cave, ready to prove that a solo necromancer could outperform an entire guild. A group of player-killing thugs ambushed him inside, unaware that they were facing a man with the soul of a vengeful god. He didn't even draw his own blade, instead letting his skeleton minion dismantle the attackers with terrifying efficiency. As the last thug fell, Herkin collected their gear, his path toward absolute power finally beginning to take shape. After collecting the loot from the fallen thugs, Herkin finally felt the momentum of his revenge beginning to build. He knew that to truly dominate the game this time, he would need his own equipment instead of relying on public showrooms. A quick stop at a high-end VR gear store revealed that his current bank balance was still far too low for a private machine. His anger spiked when he saw a massive advertisement featuring Suri, the woman who would eventually betray him, looking like a goddess of the game. Driven by the need for speed, Herkin sought out a notorious loan shark to secure the funds for his setup. The loan came with a terrifying warning of hellish consequences if he failed to pay back the 10 million won. With the gear finally installed in his small apartment, Herkin prepared to re-enter Warlord and choose his destiny. He materialized in the familiar white space of the character creation hall, where the AI guide Ariadne awaited him. Ariadne presented the warrior class first, which Herkin knew offered the fastest early game leveling based on his past life. However, he quickly rejected it, knowing that a lone warrior would eventually hit a wall against massive guilds. He dismissed the cleric class just as quickly, having no interest in supporting others who would only betray him. Ariadne then teleported him to a hidden temple to meet an elder who guarded the secrets of the mage paths. Without hesitation, Herkin demanded to learn the forbidden art of dark magic. The elder warned him that such power would corrode his very soul, yet he marveled that someone knew of this hidden path. Herkin accepted the risks, remembering a legendary solo player from his past life who had conquered entire raids as a necromancer. As he touched the book, a surge of dark energy flowed through him, officially changing his class to Necromancer. He immediately learned his first skill, Skeleton Fragment, which allowed him to summon a loyal undead servant. When he threw the fragment to the ground, a pile of bones assembled into a rattling skeleton warrior. His excitement turned to annoyance when the skeleton's head suddenly fell off, revealing just how weak his initial summon was. Realizing the summon was level 1, Herkin headed to the training dungeon to begin the grueling process of leveling up. Deep inside the cave, a pack of hungry wolves emerged from the darkness, sensing fresh prey. He ordered the skeleton to attack, but the wolves easily tore the fragile bones apart in seconds. Herkin quickly opened the skeleton's status window, discovering a variety of behavioral modes he could assign. After switching to action mode, the skeleton began a bizarre dance instead of fighting, leaving Herkin speechless. He eventually dispatched the wolves himself, but the system blocked him from deleting his character and starting over. He then noticed a deep learning feature, realizing the skeleton could improve by observing his own masterclass combat techniques. Herkin handed the skeleton a simple wooden stick and began a brutal training session to teach it how to dodge. He repeatedly knocked the skeleton down, screaming that standing still meant certain death in the high-level zones. To his surprise, the skeleton soon began dodging his strikes with fluid, professional movements. When a new pack of wolves attacked, the skeleton used its stick to systematically crush their skulls with flawless precision. Both Herkin and the skeleton gained levels, signaling that his unconventional training method was a success. He made his way to Figus Castle, the main hub for beginner players, where he intended to find high-reward quests. In the crowded plaza, he accidentally bumped into a large, aggressive player who immediately demanded a groveling apology. Before Herkin could strike back, a massive man in elite gear intervened, stopping the bully with a single hand. Herkin realized this man was Shev, the leader of the Red Bulls and a future top-ranked player from his past life. Despite Shev's kindness, Herkin walked away without a word, refusing to form any bonds that could later be broken. He vowed that the next time they met, he would be strong enough that he would never need anyone's help again. Herkin reached level 10 and received his first Warwatch, a vital piece of tech that tracked all his abilities. Ignoring traditional builds, he dumped every single attribute point into strength, intending to pass his own physical power down to his summons. He then accepted a seemingly dull quest to clear Bima Mountain, knowing it hid a secret title that would double his progress speed. As he entered the mountain cave, he noticed a strange ripple in the air that didn't match the normal dungeon layout. Suddenly, the ground shook as a massive corrupted gate materialized, pulling him into an instant death dungeon he hadn't prepared for. From the depths of the portal, a blood-curdling roar echoed, signaling the arrival of a boss far beyond his current level. As the red eyes of the beast locked onto him, Herkin realized his path to power might end before it truly began. As the red eyes of the beast locked onto him, Herkin realized his path to power might end before it truly began. He quickly summoned his first skeleton fragment, watching as the small skull materialized in a flash of purple light. The summoned skeleton stood wobbling on thin legs, its head falling off the moment it tried to salute. Herkin sighed at the pathetic sight, realizing his only companion was level 1 and completely useless in a real fight. Suddenly, a pack of hungry wolves emerged from the darkness, their growls echoing through the narrow cavern. Herkin ordered the skeleton to attack, but the wolves tore the fragile bones apart in a single savage pounce. While checking the status window, he noticed a deep learning system that allowed the summon to mimic his movements. He handed the reassembled skeleton a sturdy wooden stick, deciding to train it like a true guild recruit. Herkin threw a slow punch at the skeleton, teaching it that standing still was a death sentence in Warlord. To his surprise, the skeleton's eye sockets flickered with intelligence as it began to dodge his strikes more fluidly. When the next wave of wolves attacked, the skeleton struck with the precision of a master swordsman. A system message chimed, announcing that both Herkin and his undead servant had successfully leveled up. After 3 days of grueling training, they finally reached Figus Castle, the bustling hub for new adventurers. A rude, overweight player bumped into Herkin, demanding an immediate and groveling apology. Before the situation escalated, a towering warrior named Shev intervened, radiating a terrifyingly powerful aura. Herkin recognized him as the future leader of the Red Bulls, one of the most powerful guilds in the game. He vowed that the next time they met, he would be standing on equal footing with such legends. To catch up, Herkin accepted a low-paying quest at Bima Mountain that everyone else had ignored. He knew that clearing this specific dungeon before level 15 would grant him the ultra-rare prospect title. Because he spent his gold on gear for the skeleton, Herkin was forced to wear a cheap, humiliating rabbit costume. On the mountain trail, he encountered a group of thugs pretending to be injured to lure in unsuspecting players. Herkin saw right through their ruse, noticing the blood on their weapons wasn't from monsters, but from players. When the thugs launched a sneak attack, the skeleton moved like a shadow, cutting them down in seconds. Herkin finished off the survivors, refusing to show mercy to those who lived by betraying others. He looted 8 war watches from their bodies, a massive windfall that would finally allow him to buy proper gear. Using the materials, he crafted a haunting Ha-Ho mask to hide his identity and start his own viral brand. Deep inside the Bima Mountain cave, the skeleton suddenly struck a wall, revealing a hidden dungeon gate. A massive, corrupted werewolf stepped out from the portal, its fur matted with dark, swirling energy. The monster's first strike sent Herkin flying across the room, slamming him hard into the stone wall. Instead of fleeing, Herkin began to laugh, thrilled to find a boss tied to the game's secret main quest. He activated the slot-on ability, feeling a surge of temporary world-shattering power flow through his veins. Herkin dodged the werewolf's claws with millimetric precision, looking for a single opening in its defense. He unleashed a demon's curse strike, his blade glowing with a malevolent black flame as it bit into the beast's arm. The werewolf roared in fury, slamming the ground and creating a shockwave that threatened to collapse the entire cave. On Herkin's command, the skeleton lunged from behind, severing the monster's dominant arm in one clean motion. Together they delivered a final, synchronized barrage of strikes that reduced the corrupted beast to pixels. Herkin looked at the rare rewards, including the corrupted tracker necklace that pulsed with dark energy. He realized he had unlocked the first chapter of the game's core storyline, something rarely achieved by solo players. He decided to record the entire fight and send it to Romani, the legendary video editor of his past life. Just as he logged out to celebrate, a news broadcast revealed that a top guild was already at the final stage of the quest. Somewhere in a high-tech office, a woman with familiar cold eyes watched Herkin's gameplay video with growing interest. She recognized the tactical brilliance in his movements, unaware that the player she once killed was coming for her. Back in the game, the skeleton began to act strangely, its eye sockets burning with a new, uncontrollable red fire. As the ground beneath him began to tremble, Herkin realized that the corruption he hunted might already be inside his own summon. The ground continued to heave as Herkin gripped his blade, staring at the trembling form of his own summon. He watched the black veins of corruption pulse through the skeleton's white ribs like liquid shadow. System windows flickered red in his vision, warning of an unstable mana resonance. With a sharp command, he forced his mana into the skeleton to stabilize the decaying energy. The trembling stopped, and the skeleton knelt before its master in total submission. Herkin turned his attention back to the path leading deeper into the Bima mountain range. He noted the subtle change in the air, smelling of ozone and ancient decay. A rustle in the nearby bushes made him halt his step instantly. 3 players emerged from the trees, their weapons drawn and their eyes filled with greed. They claimed they were just looking for a party, but their blood-stained watches told a different story. Before they could utter a second lie, Herkin unleashed his skeletons with a single gesture. The thugs screamed as the undead warriors tore through their defenses in seconds. Herkin watched the last one fall, his expression unmoved by their pleas for mercy. He looted their war watches, feeling the weight of the gold and items they had stolen from others. Among the loot, a strange black fragment caught the light, vibrating with a familiar energy. This was the first piece of the Corruption Stone, a legendary item linked to the world's core mystery. With this, he could unlock quests that even the top guilds hadn't discovered yet. He pushed forward, reaching the entrance of the hidden ancient nest dungeon. The air inside the nest was thick with the smell of sulfur and old blood. Massive shadows shifted on the ceiling as he ventured deeper into the gloom. Suddenly, a swarm of dragon lizards dropped from the heights, hissing with predatory hunger. Herkin summoned his full army, the clatter of bones echoing through the chamber. The skeletons charged, forming a protective wall of bone and steel around their master. Herkin maneuvered through the chaos, looking for the dragon lizard king's location. A massive roar shook the cavern, and the king emerged, a beast twice the size of the others. Its eyes were clouded with the same black corruption Herkin had seen before. The beast lunged, its massive claws shattering the stone where Herkin had stood just a second ago. "Skeletons, engage in formation Delta," Herkin shouted, his voice echoing with authority. He pulled out the blackstone fragment, feeling its power resonate with the monster's aura. The fragment acted as a catalyst, enhancing his skeleton's strength to their absolute limit. They struck as one, their blades biting deep into the king's golden hide. The beast thrashed, knocking away 3 skeletons with a sweep of its powerful tail. Herkin waited for the precise moment the monster exposed its vulnerable throat. With a burst of speed, he lunged forward, his blade trailing a streak of purple fire. The blade found its mark, sinking deep into the creature's corrupted heart. The king let out a final, gurgling breath before collapsing into a pile of dissipating pixels. At the center of the remains lay the complete corruption stone, pulsing with malevolent light. He picked it up, feeling the immense power surge through his gauntlet. This was the key to his next transformation, but it also painted a target on his back. Outside the cave, the silhouettes of elite guild scouts began to gather, alerted by the boss's defeat. They didn't know who was inside, but they wanted whatever loot had just dropped. Herkin stowed the stone and prepared his summons for a second, even more dangerous fight. He knew that to keep his secret, no one could leave this mountain alive. A sudden message notification pinged in his ear, a private contact from an unknown source. The message read, "I know who you were in the future, Herkin." He scanned the horizon, realizing the game had changed once again. Someone else had regressed, or worse, someone had been watching him from the very start. As a cold wind blew through the valley, the first of the elite scouts stepped into the light. Herkin felt the weight of the corruption stone in his bag, its heat burning against his side. If he stayed, he would be exposed. If he fled, he would lose the path to his revenge. Herkin watched from the shadows as the trail of the mysterious night grew cold in the dense forest. He realized that his solo progress had finally breached the threshold of public awareness. The viral video of his werewolf hunt had reached the eyes of Romani, the legendary god of editing. Millions of views flooded his channel within hours, turning the unknown Necromancer into a global sensation. Back in the game, the leader of the Red Bulls Guild, Chev, rewatched the footage with narrowed eyes. Chev noted that the boy's control over his skeleton was far beyond the skill level of any ordinary player. Meanwhile, the Thunder Queen Suri felt a surge of rage upon recognizing the boy she had killed just months ago. She could not understand how a low-level loser had managed to solo a corrupted boss so early in the game. Ignoring the fame, Herkin arrived at the Raiders Association in Figgis Castle to find a new path. An old man beckoned him toward a quiet corner, offering a quest that others had deemed too dangerous. The task was simple: deliver a letter to the legendary mage Ahimri at the distant Bangsu Castle. Herkin knew this was a hidden quest that would grant him access to the rarest skill books in the game. Before leaving, he summoned his skeleton to test a new enhancement he had recently unlocked. To his amusement, the skeleton was now wearing a small, decorative crown he hadn't noticed before. The journey to Bangsu Castle required him to pass through the treacherous lizard swamp. He sensed movement in the murky water and prepared his mana for an immediate summon. A pack of high-level lizardmen burst from the reeds, their spears aimed at his chest. Herkin didn't move as his skeleton intercepted the first spear with a lightning-fast parry. He unleashed a burst of dark magic, slowing the lizardmen's movements to a crawl. Within minutes, the swamp was silent again, littered with the remains of his enemies. Suddenly, he encountered a beautiful girl named Ilya who was pretending to be injured nearby. Herkin's future memories warned him that she was a honey trap used by a rival guild. He walked past her without a word, causing her to drop the act and scream in frustration. "Try a better script next time," he muttered as he reached the gates of Bangsu Castle. Inside the castle, a massive crowd of players blocked the way to the mage's tower. He used the letter of recommendation to bypass the guards, much to the envy of the surrounding crowd. The interior of Ahimri's workshop was a labyrinth of floating books and ancient artifacts. The legendary mage Ahimri finally appeared, his aura radiating immense magical pressure. He handed Herkin 2 rare skill books, Bone Armor and the Madness Helm. Herkin immediately learned the skills, feeling a new wave of power surge through his veins. The mage then assigned him a new task: retrieve a special egg from the nest of a dragon lizard. Herkin knew this was part of the main quest line for the Count corruption scenario. As he approached the nest, he noticed several high-ranking scouts from the Hydra Guild monitoring the area. He decided to use the scouts as a distraction, waiting for them to draw the boss's attention first. The massive dragon lizard emerged with a thunderous roar, lunging at the unsuspecting Hydra scouts. While the guild was occupied, Herkin slipped into the nest and secured the mysterious egg-shaped stone. He escaped just as the beast turned its attention toward the nest, letting out a cry of fury. Returning to Ahimri, he learned that the stone was actually a corruption stone, a key to the next chapter. He was officially named Ahimri's disciple, a title that would grant him unprecedented influence in the region. But as he stepped out of the tower, he received a notification that the top guilds had formed an alliance to hunt him down. The Red Bulls, Hydra, and Thunder Hunters were now all tracking his every move. Herkin adjusted his Haho mask, knowing that the real war for the future was only just beginning. He set his sights on the Cursed Territory, the location of the next major boss and the ultimate prize. If they wanted to hunt him, he would show them what it meant to face an army of the dead. However, a new player named Mark appeared from the shadows, blocking his path with a chilling smile. Mark claimed to know the secret of the regression, and he wasn't planning on letting Herkin go any further. As the bridge began to crumble beneath them, Herkin realized this was a trap he hadn't foreseen in his past life. Herkin stood at the edge of the Cursed Territory as the sky bled into a deep, sickly crimson. He checked his system clock, realizing the event triggers were firing 3 hours earlier than in his past life. The butterfly effect of his regression had finally shattered the timeline he once relied upon. A sudden tremor shook the ground as a horde of level 150 evil eye monsters descended from the clouds. He slammed his hand onto the earth, summoning his fully upgraded skeleton legion in a burst of dark light. The skeleton knight stepped forward, its jagged blade humming with the essence of 100 fallen bosses. Herkin ordered the charge, watched as his summons tore through the monsters with mechanical precision. He noticed the loot drops were higher quality than the official database had ever recorded. A sharp whistle cut through the din of battle, and a spear of pure light struck the ground at his feet. Mark appeared from the shadows, his white armor gleaming with a holy light that felt like a direct insult. Herkin recognized him as the strategist who had orchestrated the final collapse of his previous guild. Mark laughed, stating that no matter how many times time reset, the trash would always remain trash. Herkin didn't respond with words, instead summoning the massive clay-formed golem behind him. The golem slammed its fists down, shattering the ground and forcing Mark to dodge frantically. Herkin closed the distance in an instant, his new unique sword wreathed in black flames. He unleashed the Curse of Sloth, watching as Mark's movements became sluggish and heavy. With a single devastating strike, Herkin shattered Mark's legendary shield into 1,000 fragments. Mark tried to activate a teleport scroll, but the skeleton knight's blade severed the connection before it could cast. Herkin stood over his fallen rival, the tip of his blade resting against Mark's throat. He whispered that this time there would be no million-dollar payouts for betrayal. With a final surge of necro energy, he erased Mark's character from the server entirely. The system announced the completion of the main quest, rewarding Herkin with the title of the Eternal Ruler. He looked at his hands, realizing he had finally surpassed his past life's peak in just a fraction of the time. Across the world, every player received a notification that the Cursed Territory had been conquered by a lone player. The thug lady watched the broadcast from her guild hall, crushing her wine glass in a fit of silent rage. Herkin walked toward the horizon, his army of undead following him like a shadow across the land. He realized that revenge was only the beginning of his new path in Warlord. The debt was paid, the traitors were gone, and the future was now entirely his to write. He took a deep breath of the virtual air, feeling truly free for the first time in 2 lifetimes. The era of guilds was over, and the era of the solo Necromancer had finally begun. He logged out of the game, opening his eyes in the real world with a sense of absolute victory. The loan sharks were paid off, and he was now the wealthiest man in the digital world. He walked to his balcony, looking out at the city he had once feared. The game had changed him, but this time, it was for the better. He would never again be the prey. He was now and forever the predator. He thanked the strange twist of fate that had given him this second chance at life. His journey of regression had reached its destination, and the world was finally at his feet. The solo necromancer had conquered both the game and his own destiny. No more lies, no more betrayal, just the silence of absolute power. And with that, the legend of the regressed player came to a grand, final close.